We're in the endgame now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MMO Junkies podcast, episode 3, The Endgame. My name is Swiper, and joining me today is Captain Chunk and Johnny Clash. What is going on, guys? How was your weekend?
It's going pretty well. I have alcohol.
Good.
Well, speaking of alcohol, what are you drinking right now?
I'm drinking Dead Horse Amber Premium Ale from Moab Brewery in Utah. That's right, Utah does make alcohol.
3%? 2%?
It used to be 3.2%, but in November that changed. Now we can have 5%. The Mormons are allowing it.
Stepping up
I'm sure
the
they're
big
getting-
games.
Yeah, they're getting paid more somehow by this, or else they wouldn't do it. But all right.
And Captain, what do you got?
Diet Moscow Mule, which essentially is just, take the ginger beer of a Moscow Mule and replace it with Diet Ginger Ale.
Sounds communist.
Excellent. Sounds communist. Well, I don't know about that, but
Diet communist beverage.
So before we get started, I had a pretty awesome weekend. And by the way, I am drinking an IPA from the Funk Brewery called Silent Disco. This shit is delicious. If you guys can find it, I highly recommend it. I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. 4.5 out of 5, all right?
Good job.
And
So, can you give us any tasting notes?
I could. It tastes like a really smooth IPA. It's delicious. I
That's
highly
very
recommend
specific.
it.
It tastes
Thanks.
good.
What's the bouquet like?
It looks like orange juice. Does that help?
No, not at all.
Come on.
All right.
All right. Well, anyway, so what I want to do with this episode is talk about Endgame and what we think of Endgame, what's going on right now with a lot of the MMOs that we're playing. I also want to talk about what Endgame kind of looked like prior, with some of the older MMOs that are out there. And I also want to talk about what we think we would want to change or make better if we didn't, say, currently like Endgame. And the reason why I bring this up is because every time I'm looking to play an MMO, whether it's old, new, or it's not even in development yet, one of the questions that I ask, besides is there PvP and what kind of PvP, is what is the end game like? And the reason behind this is because when you jump in an MMO, you spend a lot of time in this game. You spend a lot of time to figure it out. And let's face it, when I play an MMO, I take a lot of time to play it, and I still kind of suck at it. And it isn't really until endgame that I really start to understand the game. So before I go on and on and on, I'd like to, dish out the conversation, you guys. Starting with you, Captain. What are your thoughts on the endgame? Is this something that is relevant to you? Do you need endgame? Give me your thoughts. What do you like? What don't you like? And what would you like to change?
Well, Endgame is huge for me. If you remember from the first episode, I was big into World of Warcraft raiding. So that's the focus of my MMO experience. So back in Classic, or Vanilla, I guess is what people are calling it, with the old school one, not the new Classic. So back in Vanilla, TBC, Wrath of the Lich King, it's get to max level, do the dungeon grind to get gear so that you can go into raiding, do the first tier, get gear, do the second tier, get gear, and so on until the expansion's over, and then you repeat in the next expansion. And I love it. That's what I play MMOs for, is that the challenge of beating more difficult bosses and then needing gear to get there. And a lot of people are like, oh, you do raiding to get the gear. But for me, the gear is kind of a means to an end. So you need the gear to be able to defeat bigger bosses. And I like the idea of at least one boss in a raid having a gear check that you need to make sure you've invested enough time into it. So if I was to look at what I like the idea of challenging content that you have to get gear to be able to do more of it. What I don't like is unfortunately what WoW has become, and it's specifically about that gear acquisition, where it's really not it's so RNG dependent now that with, well, maybe not anymore, because as I'm going to date this podcast, we're going into Shadowlands near the end of the year, and they're getting rid of Titan forging, they're getting rid of corruption. Whereas it's this idea that your gear you could hit the lottery and your gear could get better than what it's supposed to be when it drops. And that makes it so that you are always grinding gear to try and get your character better, as opposed to having what's called a best in slot list, where you say, okay, this is the gear I want, I'm going to go out and get it, and that's going to make me powerful enough to maybe defeat the boss. And a lot of times you can actually beat them without the quote unquote proper amount of gear. It just makes it easier. So I don't like when there's this kind of endless treadmill that you're on to the point where you can't quote unquote win the game. I know a lot of people who really love the loot gathering, their winning the game is getting their full best in slot list. For me, it would be defeating the last boss of the current raid. And then, at that point, then it's just getting ready for the next one. So I like the treadmill. I just don't think it needs to be so random. And I'm glad that they're going back to that in Shadowlands. It's hard because with Final Fantasy 14 having Shadowbringers, it's Shadow
yeah, dude.
Both games.
I do it all the time. Like every time I try and talk about these topics. So let me ask you something. You're talking about raiding. Now the mythic system is something I actually have kind of really grown to like in World of Warcraft. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, I know it's kind of similar in a sense, where you're kind of getting that random loot drop, and then you go to your chest at the end of the week and say, oh, like, what am I going to get? Is it something you would find yourself liking, or is it kind of goes along with what you're saying? It's not exactly, what you prefer.
I mean, Mythic Plus dungeons or
Mythic Plus?
raiding?
Mythic Plus. I apologize. Yeah, Mythic Plus.
Really love the idea. I'm going to talk about a bit of a negative to it, but I think Mythic Plus Dungeons is one of the best things that they added to the game. And part of that reason is that it creates an end game for a whole different set of people. Because WoW had really two end games before Legion when they added Mythic Plus. You had raiding and you had PvP. And I'm not a PvPer, so I just kind of ignore that part. And so I focus on raiding. And what happened was dungeons were... You get to max level, you do the dungeons for your pre-raid, and then now it's just raiding. And actually, my friends who are playing Classic WoW, I'm just kind of putzing around leveling in it because the time invested in that, I kind of got behind the curve and stopped playing it. But my friends who are playing it now, like, they hardly log into play because they've already done the dungeons. They don't need loot from it. They're raiding. So they log in for raid night, they do their raiding, and it's over. And that's fine. But I feel like with Mythic Plus, now you have actually something you can, if you wanted to, log in every day, find your 4 buddies, and do endgame dungeons. Because I love dungeons. And the fact that you can do them, it's kind of evergreen content, is great. And at the same time, you could even make it infinite and say, how high can we go? Because it just keeps getting more and more and more. So you could really say, well, maybe not the gear is not the issue, but we want to see if we can get to a 20 or a 25 or a 30 or whatever it might be. Whatever's possible. I don't even think you can get to a 30. It's just his stuff hits so hard you'll just die. But I love that idea that you can now find your end game in that, in trying to really push yourself. Now, the part I don't like, which is the part that it's hilarious that Blizzard focused on this, is the speedrunning aspect of it. I would love it if it was just really hard and you could take your time and like find the best way to go through there and complete the dungeon, instead of having this timer that it's always go, 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 go. And Blizzard's like, hey, let's make this an esport and essentially a dungeon race. And I'm like, that's not really the spirit of what I think it should be. And it sounds like what they're doing in Torghast, which is their, deep dungeon, like roguelite thing, is all about taking your time and finding your best way through it to see if you can get to the higher and higher floors, which sounds awesome. Which they're essentially stealing that from Final Fantasy 14. But I think Mythic Plus is a fantastic addition, and it just adds on to this already great endgame PvE that WoW does so well.
Well, hell yeah, man. I really like Mythic Pluses. I haven't really done much of the raiding, but it is one thing that is really nice is that you can, spend maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and get like 2 or 3 of them done, and then call it a night, which is really nice for some people like me that have to get up for work the next day. So if I only have 2 hours, it like works out really well. And just like a lot of people, maybe I guess for the casual base or whatever you want to call us. But yeah, so really, anything else to add? Because if not, I'll throw it over to Johnny, and I want to hear what he has to say.
I think I'm good for that. Yeah.
All right, Johnny, you're up, buddy.
All right. So when Captain first started talking about WoW, I was muted, but I was chuckling to myself because he talked about like what to call it, like vanilla and classic, and then the normal WoW, and it sort of made me think of like Coca-Cola over the years, like a soda company, what they go through, like they rebrand it, like there's a Coke came out with vanilla Coke, and then like classic Coca-Cola. So
and the new Coke.
And then the new Coke, right? There's
yes.
Like WoW is following the same business model as Coca-Cola, which you can't blame them for. So I think soon there'll be like a real sugar only comes in glass bottle WoW that you can only buy in Mexico. I think that's the next step.
Classic.
Yeah, it's gonna be vanilla
classic
WoW.
Burning Crusade.
Vanilla classic.
Right. Yeah, vanilla
point,
classic
man.
new WoW.
Good point.
So I don't like Endgame very much at all. I don't like the concept of it. I'm not a repetitive type person, and I'm not like I don't really care about DPS meters, things like that either.
So you would just say like scrap it. You're like, no, I don't need Endgame.
To do content, and I'd like it to be challenging, but I don't want to do it over and over and over again. I hate gear grinding. I despise it in every format. Now it's palatable sometimes. I can deal with it occasionally, and I'll explain when. So my good endgame examples are old, obviously, because I think once WoW perfected endgame, according to people, quote unquote perfected, people have been copying them. So, and that makes sense. I mean, that's
yeah, sure. I mean, if
companies
it's
do.
A lot of people flocking to it, right? I mean,
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Why
Who doesn't
not?
want 5 million concurrent subscribers?
Hell
That's
yeah.
ridiculous. Why wouldn't you want that? So, Altom Online, of course, the first graphical MMO that ever existed in 1997, and I played it in 2001, 2003.
And to this day, you still play it. And
I
last
still
year,
play it on
you
free
know,
servers.
you
Yeah.
know, yeah, okay.
Shout out to Outlands. Let's join it. It's great.
Who?
So,
Just kidding.
Outlands
Go.
is the-
Just go. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Outlands, Greg. It's a great server that you should all play on, and it's free. So, I think for me, I like PvP, and I love PvE also. Altom Online is probably one of the games that perfected it, and it was the first to do it. And I think one of the big reasons is because gear's not a thing. In Altom Online, when you die, everything you drop on your corpse. So it doesn't make any sense to carry better gear. You're gonna lose it. So it's talent and strategy and communication and things like that are the entire key to endgame. And it's seamless PvE and PvP. You can be fighting a boss with 20 people. That's like a boss in any other game. And get jumped by 20 people, 20 players. 20 red,
Yeah.
20 PKers.
Yeah.
Another guild that wants to loot. So that's perfect. I love that. It's exciting. Your heart pounds. It's pretty great. So, also on the complete other side of the coin, Final Fantasy XI, which came out in 2002. They do PvE very, very perfectly. The thing they do though is the whole game seems like endgame. It's a very, very challenging game from the start. You have to group at level 11 or 12. You have to get a full party to get experience. Everything you do in that game, the story's good. You need people to help you that are higher level. The community is brilliant. They're really nice. So that game doesn't feel like an end game. Now there is stuff to do at end game, obviously, but it's just another scale of difficulty from the regular game.
So let me interrupt you here, and you kind of bring out a good point that I kind of want to touch on here. When you're saying 11 and it's challenging from the beginning. Now there's obviously a lot of MMOs that have come out in our time, and we've played a lot of them. And I think that we can all agree that it's probably not the most challenging thing we've done. And maybe it's because we played so many MMOs that we have a little bit more experience and a little bit more knowledge. And if somebody that was to come in fresh and completely new, I think they might find some challenge, but not to the degree of maybe like 11 or something. Do you think
you're right,
that...
because... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, do you think maybe this is why a lot of MMOs nowadays, or maybe even a few years ago, really it kind of saved the harder content to the very end? Maybe just not to discourage people, and maybe that's just kind of my thinking. That's...
I think it's a combination of that. Also, I mean, you have to bring in generations and age into this. So the people that first started playing MMOs and creating them were 70s D&D players and started creating 80s single player RPGs, and everything was puzzle solving and difficult and very unique. And those people were willing to spend 8 hours on a Saturday, doing one campaign in D&D, or doing something in a game, unlocking one puzzle in a game, one stage. So when you take those people, put them into an MMO, like the first few, Ultima, EverQuest, Final Fantasy 11, Dark Age Camelot, that came out in 2002.
That came out a little after. Was that a little after or before Final Fantasy? I can't remember.
I don't
drawing
know.
a blank. I forget.
I don't remember. But those games, you spent a lot of time, and it was very challenging to even learn the game because it was just a lot more complicated, I guess. So generations, now that it sort of wears down. So, and they're trying to accommodate different generations now, and I think that's a big problem too. You used to make an MMO for a very specific group of people. Now it's made for everyone. So you sort of have to expedite that leveling process and learning curve and things like that. You have to get rid of it.
I just looked it up, and Dark Age of Camelot came out October 2001.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah, I was just looking at that up too now, because I made a reference to my second video, and I had to write out all these dates on a notepad because I was like, holy crap, like how old are these games that we've tried and we've played? Like, it's insane. I guess we're getting old, but still.
Well, we are. We're getting old. Okay.
Another thing too. Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Another thing too to consider with the difference between MMOs now and MMOs then is the idea of logging into a graphical video game with hundreds of people on at the same time was a novel idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, people would spend hours in it because it was completely brand new. It would be like the equivalent of VR today. And the idea of getting onto a video game and playing online with people today, to the new teenagers, young adults, they've grown up with it their entire lives. So it's not novel at all.
No,
so
it's
something they do. Yeah, it's something they do all the time. So,
right, so you go ahead. Sorry.
So you build the game. You could get people to play 8 hours in UO because it's, oh my god, I'm online with all these people. A kid today or a young adult today that logs on too.
But the novelty aspect of that being engaging is also something that wears off.
So okay, I'm a little lost when you say the novelty wears. You mean like you've experienced, you're playing it, you've experienced it, and now that you've experienced it. Okay, all right.
It's never been done before.
Yes, okay, I got you. All right.
Yeah, your first
new to you. It's like literally like new technology.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
It's something that's never been done before, essentially.
It's like the first time you do anything in life too. I mean, you're never going to get that same feeling from when something was brand new. You never experienced it before. And like it's like Captain said, we do it every day of our lives now for the past 15 to 20 years. So it has to change. It can't have the same effect on you. That's the thing.
And it's why all these games are able to, or try to brand themselves as quote unquote MMOs.
Yes.
Because everything is online now.
Yep.
And
oh yeah.
I think the MMO genre needs to realize that, because I think a lot of it has come to, and we're getting off topic for Endgame, but a lot of the MMO genre itself is banking on this idea of you're in an online persistent world. Everything does that now. You've got like GTA 5 online.
Yeah,
It's an online
exactly.
persistent world. You need to find something new, and maybe that's where we can round this back to Endgame. How do we spark people's interest in that again?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you answer that, you'll be a billionaire. Oh, I don't. No one knows.
But yeah,
Everybody keeps
sorry,
making the same stuff.
we kind of jumped off the rails, but that's cool, man. And Jake, I just want I'm Johnny, sorry. I want you to let's bring it back to what you were saying, if you remember what you were saying.
About what, Final Fantasy 11?
Yeah,
The older games.
the older games.
Also, the older games. Well, let's Final Fantasy 11 specifically. My favorite thing about the game is how you feel unique and how you feel like you're playing your job and you have a responsibility at that job to be good at it because you bring something to the table no other job brings. Also, now this is particular to Endgame of Final Fantasy 11. You need different combinations of jobs and sub jobs. Which, if no one knows what a sub job is, it's another. You can make a combination of any two jobs in the game, and the sub job is half your level of your main job, and you get all those abilities up to half.
Mm-hmm.
So you make all these different combinations, utilize all these different abilities, and it's very original. And you can put those in use with different combinations of other jobs in a full party of 6 to fight a boss. And it's not the same ever because there are hundreds and hundreds of combinations, which is one thing I like to. I was going to bring up Guild Wars 2 Endgame, and the more because I enjoyed it, and the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I didn't like it, which is weird. But I remember why I started to like it because it wasn't a holy Trinity.
Holy Trinity.
Yeah, type situation. It wasn't healer, tank, and DPS. You take care of yourself for the most part. It's telegraphing.
It would be
so
more like
every
an action game.
yeah, every fight's a little different.
And it is and think about it. Back then, that was kind of like revolutionary, I guess
it
you
was
could
like
say.
Back to Nico or Captain's novelty idea. It was a newer thing back then, and it was engaging for a long time. I played it every day for a year, 5-6 hours a day. So, and I liked it. It didn't feel like you were grinding dungeons, even if you did the same dungeon 10 times in a row in a night. It didn't feel. It felt different because your combination of jobs and classes and responsibilities.
And they also had choices in the dungeon, so you could go 3 different routes in the dungeons.
You're right.
Yep. You know, it's and I think you're touching on a thing like what I was saying before. You like playing the game, and
yes,
a lot of people, and I fall into this trap all the time. Sometimes I feel like the game is really Endgame, you know, and I think that's just kind of what's happened over the years with these newer games or whatever you want to say. But I can agree. I can agree with that to an extent. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep rolling, man.
I think I'm pretty much finished from what
I think you're right,
typed up.
I think you're right though that and maybe this can be our next conversation, but I really feel like you hit the nail on the head. The end game is the game, and almost every modern MMO, starting with World of Warcraft back in the day, to a lesser extent in vanilla.
Yeah,
you had everything pre max level, and then you had max level. Now, when I said to a lesser extent in vanilla WoW, was because pre max level was so long that you actually had that journey that mattered, and it took a while. It took possibly a month or more, depending on how much you played, to get there. And people who are playing classic now are experiencing this, and I'm experiencing that with trying to level my 2 characters. I have one that's in like 41 or 42, and the other one that just hit 22. And then going into my retail account where I'm getting to level 80 in a day. It's a completely different experience. And nowadays, the designers of games have to say, do we want to even put a focus on the leveling that most people don't care about, or put all of our focus on the end game where the game really starts?
Yeah, I agree with that. And as we've discussed, I like the leveling aspect, and I like when a game, it feels like an RPG. That's exactly how I phrase it. If an MMO feels like a single player RPG when I'm questing, I love that. It's incredible. And then I like to come together with other people to do dungeons and things like that that also expand on that story or help you progress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The problem I'm seeing though, like that's great, and I love that too. But being an MMORPG, you have to figure we're gonna have this person playing for years, maybe forever if they can. Well, what happens when they get to max level? Does the game just end for them and then they move on to the next MMO? Like, that's the problem we're having. Is Endgame has to be a whole separate game to keep you playing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know what you're saying. I mean, that all comes down to, I guess, profitability too. I mean,
Yeah,
like
and
for Final Fantasy 11, like what do you do when you hit max level?
there's a lot of content.
but like,
just
what is it
like
like?
every
It's
other
like
MMO.
killing bosses, like doing special quests that take
Mhm.
you a while, like grouping up to defeat more
Well,
bosses.
Final Fantasy 11 has all the best in slot stuff too.
Yeah,
Is
And
it
I
a
think-
gear
and
grinding game? Like,
I think-
because I never played it, so I don't,
it's
well,
so.
I think that's what we're asking. Like, when you have your best gear that you could possibly get, is the game
Mhm.
like? And this is another question I kind of wanted to bring up: is the game over in a sense where, okay, I have the best in slot, gear for this. Now, Final Fantasy 11 is a bit more it's a bit more different than most games out there because obviously you have
is
one
very
character and you can change you can play every job on one character. So that means you don't necessarily have to make an alt. You can just say, I'm going to go play this job now. Like, is that kind of what you do in a sense once you get your best in slot, or is there just more
You can.
content to? Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, you do that. A lot of people have other jobs, but that boils down, or not boils down. It adds into because you have a sub job, so you have to level other jobs
Mm-hmm.
as a sub job to your main job, and the different combinations of all those jobs help you do different content. So you need different jobs leveled at the end at endgame to do different things.
Right.
There are certain bosses you just can't beat without certain jobs combinations.
So in a sense, they kind of like, and this kind of like, and this relates to Endgame in a sense where you get to a certain point and you're kind of at Endgame, but then you hit like a roadblock and you're like, okay, I need to maybe level this job or something, and then I can
Yes.
kind of move on. And so it's like you're kind of getting to Endgame, but you're not, and it kind of goes back to, well, I'm playing the game. I'm not playing to get to Endgame. I'm playing the game to play the game in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, and that's how
I
I'm
see
taking
that as
it.
actually part of Endgame, though. Like, I see that as like you put in, because I don't know Final Fantasy 11. I'm going to put in a WoW context. Let's say you could do that in WoW, and you're in a raid, and you're like, oh, I need to have this many levels of this job. Doing that leveling would not be going back to the game to me. It would be my end game goal. And it's the same idea with like leveling professions. If profession systems had things where you had to get certain pieces of gear from the professions, or it might be doing, like if for WoW, it might be doing your daily quests or unlocking this reputation. Like leveling another job would just be part of endgame.
That's true.
Yes, but in Final Fantasy it feels different. Now you've never played it, but every job that you do has a very, very specific and interesting story, has a very unique set of abilities. Every job you do or class, it's the same thing. They're synonymous. Feels almost like a different game, and that's what I love about it. Greg can contest it, or Swipper can contest to this. He's played Final Fantasy a good bit. More than I could ever expect of him to play because of how slow the combat is. I don't know. I like that about the game, but it also everyone can't stand that.
It's hard. It's hard when
But
you
doesn't
like,
every single job feel completely different?
It does. I can
Yeah.
attest to that. It does. Everything's different. Nobody really has what you have. And that's
Right.
a really cool concept. I can agree with that 100%. It's a very cool concept.
And you don't. It's in WoW. My biggest problem with WoW is that every job feels the same. Every DPS class is like hit this certain amount of buttons, hit this, do this, cast this now. It's like mashing buttons almost at the right time, and that's not what other games feel like 11 or UO, Altom Online. Even Final Fantasy 14, which we haven't talked about yet, which is WoW's biggest competitor, I think, right now.
It's got to be one of them. Absolutely.
It doesn't
That
feel.
or ESO.
Yeah, exactly. It feels different. Your class, and Captain, you can attest to this too. Your class does feel a little more unique, I think, and it plays different.
Yeah,
and I think that's down to their system, like the rotations in Final Fantasy 14 allow for that more.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think the developers of WoW have pigeonholed themselves too much into everything has to be the same, so everyone's happy.
Yeah, it's homogenized.
Uh,
It's so bad.
And they have they literally have like 32, 36 specs in the game, or classes, because each spec, like until maybe Shadowlands, because they're trying to pull back on that, but probably still, like they've developed a system where every spec is its own feel, which means that they now have to develop 30, is it what, 12 classes, still 13 classes?
Mm-hmm.
I'll say 32. My numbers might be wrong. There's 32 specs in the game, and they all have to play unique, which means that's 32 classes. That's ridiculous, which is why it's going to start feeling the same.
Right.
Because there's only so many ways you can skin a cat.
Yeah, it's hard to make them feel unique. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think Final Fantasy 14 has, what, 12 jobs? So, it's a lot easier. And there are no specs in 11 or 14. You know, that's another reason the job feels important and unique, because it is. You don't get a chance. If you are a Dark Knight in Final Fantasy 14, you tank.
Mm-hmm. You tank.
You know?
Yeah.
So
that's it. That's it, man. That's it. If you don't want to tank, but you like a Dark Knight,
14 jobs. So
yeah.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, though.
Okay.
Because in 14/11, you mentioned it before.
Mm-hmm.
You can have every single job. So if you're equating that, that's really, you have 12 specs. Like how WoW you pick a shaman, say for example, you have elemental, resto, and enhancement, and you can swap to those 3 as much as you want. So in Final Fantasy 14 and 12, because you can do everything on every character, they're almost just like specs.
Well, you can't do everything on every character.
You mean every technically job. Yeah, your physical character, your physical character
is almost like a spec.
Wow. You can't do it at once, though. You can't change.
You can't do that in WoW either.
But you can change in WoW out of combat anytime.
But you can do that in Final Fantasy 14 by swapping your weapon.
Yeah, as long as you have the class unlocked and leveled, absolutely. I mean, that's true. I mean, you can, if you want to DPS, you can DPS. If you want to tank, you can tank, as long as you leveled it. You know.
But in WoW, you don't derive any abilities from having other specs, right? I don't know. I'm asking.
14 either. In 11, you maybe, because you can mix and match, but 14, they're essentially a spec.
Yeah, because you get the same role. Because in 14, there are action abilities from your exact job, and then there are role abilities that are pulled from other things. Yeah, 11's completely different.
Yeah, 11's totally different. I mean, 14 kind of used to be that way, but yeah, and so anyway, kind of going.
Was like
14, you used to have 2 classes, and you would have to, you know, if you wanted a bard, you had to level a white mage and an archer or whatever it's called.
I really liked that.
Your role cool. Instead ability you took from other people's specs.
Yeah. But anyway, so to kind of get back to the conversation, I mean I think you bring up a lot of good points. And I now I'm starting to see kind of what Captain's saying, where when you're kind of at that part of the end game and you have to do something to get a little bit further, that definitely could, to me, I could agree that is kind of considered end game in a sense, because you're only trying to progress, and that's really what you're doing in a sense when you're playing an MMO to getting to end game. So
yeah, I think like end game is all about what am I going to do with my character now, and you could PvP, you could PvE, you could level more characters or jobs like in 14 or 11.
11's really the question is an anomaly in this. It doesn't fit anything else that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well,
because it feels every job feels so different that you're not doing the same thing as you level.
No, yeah.
That's why I came back to the question of what do you do at the end? Like,
yeah.
What is your goals?
It doesn't feel like part of Endgame. It doesn't feel like let's bring up. I played Lich King more than I played anything else in WoW. Like, you needed to level a craft in that to be best in slot, and you picked a craft based on what you researched a guide and this said this is best for this situation. So you had to level a craft based on to be best in slot, get your damage meter up or tank the best. 11's not like, it's not it really isn't a part of your main, like, it doesn't feel like you have one main character, one main class. It feels like you can do everything, and it's all so separate and so a different experience. It's not like has nothing to do with like best in slot and being the best DPS. It just has,
yeah.
No, it has more to do with finishing every single part of the content. So it's more doing the content.
Quote unquote raids in that game.
There are certain bosses that take a lot of people. Yeah, but
like what would be completing all the content? Because like in WoW, it would be defeating the last boss in whatever raid you're trying to do on the hardest stuff.
Well, here, let me kind of jump in here, and this is kind of what I think. Just playing 11 here, 11 feels a little bit more sandboxy than, let's say, 14 or WoW. Whereas 11, you don't really have a window that says, okay, here's what you can do at this eye level, right? 11 is one of those things where you say, all right, you either look it up online, you talk to somebody in your guild or whatever, their free company, whatever they're called, Link Shell, and you're like, let's go fight this boss. Let's get a group together and fight this boss. And it's not something you can necessarily like click and say, this is what we need to do. This is a part of the end game content, I guess. It's to me, it's more sandboxy. So I think in a sense we can classify some things as end game, right? Like there are some things that you can only do if you're strong enough, right?
When you have the highest level job, because you need all those stats and you need to be able to wear certain gear. Yeah. It's not, you're not checking boxes, really. If you can beat a boss, say someone else took a party of 12 people to beat one boss, and you can do it on a level 75 red mage / ninja, but it takes you 7 hours to do it. They did it in 45 minutes. You can still do the content on your own, the way you want to do it. You don't really need to check all those specific boxes just to finish something. It doesn't feel like checking boxes at all. It feels like you're accomplishing something that's challenging, and you can do it your own way.
Yeah, and I mean, I have limited exposure to Dark Age Camelot, like I said in many of my videos, and I bring up Dark Age because it was, Dark Age and Final Fantasy, they were the games that were out there, and that game, I'm pretty sure it had dungeons and had things, and as much as the focus was on the world versus world, the PvP, realm versus realm, whatever you want to call it, I remember Mark Jacobs basically saying, hey, like 50 or 60% of you guys spent most of your time in the PvE areas. And they didn't have a lot of the systems that a lot of the games nowadays have. So that even feel maybe a little bit sandboxy, because you don't necessarily have something in front of you that says, you can do this, go do it. You kind of, I guess, maybe explore, maybe hear from somebody, maybe look it up. I don't know if that's really any different, but I mean, I don't know. That's just my thoughts. But
if you were making a sandbox game, what would you make that end game then? Like, what would that look like?
I gotta be honest with you. I hate sandbox games. I truly do. I really like having things to do. Like I could care less about building. I could barely care less about crafting. I'm more combat, and I haven't really seen a good sandbox game, in my opinion, really. I don't know. I haven't really gotten into any sandbox games, but if there was a sandbox game that was going to have Endgame, it would probably be very similar to what we're experiencing nowadays. I like having dungeons. I like raids. Like I said, I love the mythics. And when I'll start talking about what I like, don't like, and all that good stuff, I can kind of go into that a little bit more detail. But I just want to make sure, Johnny, you get what you want to say, get it all out, and then
yeah, I'm good. I'm done. I'm completely out of ideas.
Okay.
I'm almost out of beer.
So
let's see first.
I gotta be honest, like hearing both you guys talk, I can agree with a lot of what you both said. There's a part of me that really likes what Captain Chunk says, and with the dungeons, I do like running dungeons, and I don't mind running them a few times. And I do like the fact that some games offer you tokens, or some games offer you some kind of, hey, you could get this, maybe you could get that. But I think like, Captain was saying, there's got to be a good balance to it. But one thing that I really love that we didn't talk about is Guild Wars 2, which we sort of talked about, but Guild Wars 2 has, at the end game, has a system called fractals. And one thing I love about fractals is that when you start doing fractals, and if you don't know what this is, it's basically Guild Wars, the team, they developed a bunch of different dungeons. Not the same dungeons you were running while you're questing. These are completely different dungeons that are designed like completely different, with mechanics you haven't seen and different things. So when you jump into fractals, you can go from like level 0 to I forget what it is. And they have this agony system. And the whole point is to slot agony resistance in your gear so you can get further. So it's got a progression system like Mythics, not as complicated, but it's got the same type of system. So you're constantly saying, okay, I want to get to the next level. And when you get to that level and you just can't get it, then you have to look at yourself and say, do I suck? Does our party suck? Like, what can I do better? And that's what I really love about progressing in Endgame, is what can I do better, or how can I get better to get
Also,
further?
Like with fractals, it's completely randomized.
Exactly.
What dungeon you're going to get, what section you're going to get.
Right.
And also, what another thing Guild Wars 2 really did well that they intertwined into their game was puzzles. And jumping puzzles things you actually have to figure out. So it wasn't just kill trash, kill a boss. It was climb this, figure this out, then kill a boss, then do this again. And it was all, it was very dynamic. And Fractals, I think, exemplified that. They put all those aspects into one thing: the randomized, the agony resistance, they got difficult every time you passed a level. And the puzzles and the jumping stuff into one. So it was very, very different every time you did it, which is what Guild Wars did very well.
Yeah, it was very diverse. And the thing is, I love
like roguelite.
Say that again?
What they're doing like toward like a roguelite almost.
I don't know.
Like multiple floors. I think like deep dungeons. In 14.
So like
you have multiple levels. You're trying to. It gets harder as you go.
Yeah.
So, well, think of it like this.
And the randomized, like you don't know what you're gonna get on the next level that you.
Yeah, but it's much more difficult than Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High in 14.
Yeah, I mean it's truly a dungeon experience. But like, so one dungeon that I really remember that I really like was, you basically entered this area and there was this giant like structure, this huge building that you looked up, and the first thing you come across is this giant boss that's holding this hammer. Now, I could be totally fucking this up. I probably am. But you kill this boss, right? You pick his hammer up, and as you're carrying this hammer, you start taking stacks, and these stacks kind of go up higher within a certain amount of time frame. And if you hold it for over 5 stacks or something, you basically get one shot, or you take so much damage you die. So you have to drop it. And then you have to wait for those stacks to go down, so then somebody else has to pick it up. And while you're doing this, you're fighting mobs, and then you're doing a jumping puzzle that has these gusts of winds that could blow you off and kill you instantly. And you're doing all these things, and you're bringing this hammer up because the only way you're going to get past the second boss is by using that hammer. And those are some of the mechanics that I really find enjoyable. And don't get me wrong, like I love dungeons. Like I loved Final Fantasy XIV's dungeons, and I like the fact that you can do a hard mode and different types of modes. But I also really like that when you get to Endgame, you see dungeons that you've never seen before in your entire life. Like you haven't seen them unless you watch a YouTube video and read a guide. But you haven't seen them. You haven't done them while leveling up. And again, like I'll say this again, I love Mythics. I think they're great. I think they challenge you to an extent where you feel like, okay, I'm this good with my class, but I could be better. What do I need to do to get better? And that's also what I really like. So Guild Wars 2 kind of had that, what can I do better? How can I do this better? And the one thing I really like about Fractals is, think about a game that first comes out and say they have like 5 maps out, 5 dungeons. They bring out a second expansion. They add another 4 dungeons in there, right? Now you have 9 dungeons that rotate here and there, here and there. And then let's say the community hates this one dungeon, like absolutely hates it. well, they could do all their numbers and say, well, this dungeon sucks. Nobody wants to play it. Let's take it out for a little bit, redesign it, and bring it back in. And then therefore, like, you always have content that's coming through that's kind of new. And it's kind of the same. It's kind of something you expect. So as a veteran player, you're like, yes, there's going to be 4 more. Yes, there's going to be another 4 more. And plus, we're going to get dungeons within the expansion that we're going to be able to experience. So it's like the cherry on top, in my opinion. Like, that's just something that I really like. Now,
So
I know from...
Can I
ahead.
interject?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
The last time you played Guild Wars 2, how long did you play it for?
Oh, God. Well, Jake, it was like you. I played for a year, and then...
Yeah,
I kind of went back here and there, but I didn't play very long because, to me personally, when I played that game, I got my fill from the Holy Trinity. I did, like, not having the Holy Trinity, I really did. But I think just playing the Holy Trinity for so long, it's just something I prefer. Like, I like to be able to click on a target and heal them. I know that sounds dumb, but I really like to be able to do that.
I think it's a particularly hard game to get back into. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately
because of Endgame, or what do you mean?
Just the game in general. Because Guild Wars 2 is an exceptional game. It really is. But when I thought about it today to take notes on it, I didn't want to play it. You know, I didn't really care one way or the other. But
Why is that?
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. It's a very tough game to jump back into. Because it's so different and there's so much to do. And
is it their horizontal progression? Because we didn't talk about that either, because they don't have any gear.
That's
that a lot.
That's a really good point too. I mean, Endgame, it's all, most of the games are vertical, are they not?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's all vertical.
Yeah.
And then that's exactly what I talked about in my spiel at the beginning, was like, I love that vertical grind.
Yeah.
I'm going to get better gear to do more gear that needs even better gear. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's the accomplishment for me. And I think that's one of the things I didn't really like about, and I didn't end up getting to the quote unquote end game in Guild Wars 2. I really liked their leveling. And they were the ones that I think really kind of like created that idea of like world quests, where you go to a place and you do the quest in the area.
Yes.
And you fill the bar and then you move on.
They came up with so many brilliant things.
But like the idea of not having gear to get and you're doing it just because you want to, which is hilarious, because I would think that it should be around stuff you want to do, but to me there just isn't any actual like extrinsic reward. It's completely intrinsic.
See, I like that. Yeah, I know we are fairly opposite on Endgame. I love horizontal progression. I don't know why Greg and I couldn't get back into it. So.
I think it's kind of like you said. It's to me, I think it's the combat, but I think it's also hard to get into with all the changes, and the way you used to play the game is not the way you used to play the game anymore. And you know,
just
it's
like almost like there's too much an analysis paralysis.
You know what it is? I just figured it out right now.
What's that?
When you come back to like WoW or any other game, usually there's leveling to do because there's been an expansion, or so you have to. They force you through progression to learn your class again.
Right.
Guild Wars hasn't raised the level cap in 6 years.
Yeah, they've only added like classes to your class or whatever you want to
Right.
call those.
So you're sort of thrown back into it, and there is no way but trial by fire, which is a pun because one of their expansions.
Path of Fire.
to learn it, and we just get discouraged. I think that's all there is to it.
That's fairly and there you go. Like that can bring us into even more topics of discussion.
Or I mean, you could learn your class by doing structured PvP.
You could,
but you can't queue anymore with more than 2 people. So you can't actually work on the team dynamics. So
well, then hey,
that may be it too.
That is a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about. Also, is PvP. Do you guys think that games need to have some kind of form of endgame PvP, or if they have really good PvE, could you freaking care less about the PvP?
Yes, the second thing you said.
Well, you know me, so my answer is always going to be PvP doesn't need to exist. I'll go play a different game if I want to do that. Like if I want a PvP, I'll play League of Legends, or if I want a shooter, I'll play something else. But
yeah,
if it has really good PvE, there's no need for PvP at all. And in fact, I think sometimes, and we're seeing this a lot in like WoW, the fact that they have to try and balance between the two makes it impossible to actually balance both.
Yeah, we talked about this in our first podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're all in agreement that it's almost impossible to do both well.
So
Yeah.
Now,
you
go ahead.
almost have to make them separate games, like within the same game. Like you've got your PvPers and you've got your PvEers. They have their own end game that don't cross. Or you could be like you could be one of those super players that has all the time in the world and do both.
That's what you have to
But
do,
the problem is you would almost have to have separate abilities and like completely different gear that can't be used in either one, and it's just a mess.
Now here's the caveat to that. As Greg brought up before, sandbox games tend to do both pretty well, but a PvE version in the sandbox is usually crafting and gathering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just about to say that the sandbox games, to me, feel like Endgame is one tagline: live in this world. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really hard, I think, in my mind, for developers to keep people playing, because you have to make live in this world intriguing. And that's why I think it's crafting, because part of living in the world could be having a farm, going out and getting your trees down and building this and that and doing this and creating an economy, like literally creating a virtual world.
Yes. And
but if you don't do it right, then it becomes lame and boring.
Yes.
See, Altom Online, that's what happened in Endgame. When you finished your character templates, when you've PvP'd and done all the bosses, you ended up crafting. Because that's the way that you can get the best gear that's still disposable, the cheapest way, and you're restocking your PvE and PvPers with crafting. It makes it very immersive, but again, it's a sandbox game, and that becomes the end game. Just like Albion Online.
Yeah.
You had, and this is why Swipper didn't get into it, he didn't have the time to keep up with the crafting and gathering, which you had to do. It was necessary to PvP.
It was like playing Farmville, but not on your phone. Like, I couldn't do it on my phone. You know, I had to be sitting in front of my computer, taking time out of what I wanted to do was killing people. I had to sit there and be a farmer, and that's very difficult for me to do.
Yeah, but Adam and I, who had all the time in the world, did everything, and we had a blast.
And that other game that we all played and then quit, like within a month, not less than a month. What was it? They eventually had a relaunch of it.
Oh,
Arcade?
God.
Arcade.
Arcade, but there was that other game, Bless.
Oh, fuck Bless.
I'm saying Arcade.
Okay.
A lot of that was like
Sandbox.
running your economy.
Yeah, Arcade is a sandbox.
Yeah, Arcade is total, and that's total like crafting and farming and chopping trees down and stealing trees. And
hey, here you go. I like sandbox games.
We just figured that shit out, man. So that is your perfect end game right there, sandbox. Boom.
Except for 11. Again, an 11 is this anomaly that doesn't fall on any line. It's not black and white. There's something different with it.
And the funny thing is, and it's great for our end game conversation, the players that are sandbox lovers despise the theme park games, which is like WoW and Final Fantasy 14 and EverQuest 2, and all of the WoW clones. And people who are hardcore theme park games, like myself, and I'm pretty sure Swiper, you too.
Yes, absolutely.
Cannot get into sandbox games at all.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
So you really have to say, am I a sandbox player and you go to those games? Or am I a theme park player and you go to those games? The problem was WoW is so popular that they stopped making sandbox games.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% correct. That's a great point. I like theme park games until you get to Endgame.
So like, and that's my thing, man. I feel like Endgame is such a, to me, it's such a deciding factor. I mean, another thing that I really like, which I don't think could fit every game, is what ESO does. When you get Endgame, you start ranking up. They're not realm abilities. I'm getting mixed up with Warhammer, but you get those extra levels where you could put your points in some passives and things like that, and then that transfers over
to PvP.
It transfers over to PvP, but it also transfers to every single new character that you make. And I think that's a cool concept, because then you're like, yo, I can start this other class and be like, well, I got this shit because I worked my ass off on this character, and it's kind of paying off.
See,
So
that came about in Final Fantasy 11 too. 11, after you get 75, which is max level, you then can accrue these extra points that you put into all your stats and stuff like that. And you get those when you start a new character or a new job.
Oh. So do you think something like that would make Endgame for modern games? And I know 11's kind of, and Jake, I'm not trying to disclude you, but I know 11's kind of anomaly, like you said, but you can still answer this question. Do you think that more games should do something like this? Something rewards you for going so far in this character and doing so much that it kind of trickles down into something else that you create, in a sense.
I think it should have something you can tailor to make your class more unique, other than getting best in slot. So I think I personally would want more input into my class. I don't like being like everyone else. I don't like the idea of best in slot. It takes the originality and me it takes the fact that I feel that I'm important completely out of the game and different and unique.
You have best in slot for sure, like all your classes, right? So you have best in slot for a Dragoon and the best in slot for a Dark Knight. I mean, that's, what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, but you're saying with these other games, there's something beyond that.
Well,
sandbox games, you mean?
Well, yeah, no, okay, like ESO, like when you say you get 50 levels with your Dragon Knight or whatever the fucking champion levels. Yeah, you get 50 champion levels. Those champion levels transfer over to the other character that you want to make and create.
Yes,
you're still level 1, but you have 50 champion levels that you can add to that character. That's kind of what I'm asking.
And the champion skill set is you can make it completely different. There's like 9 different skill trees that you can tailor. Again, Absolutely. It's another way to make your character unique, though, which is another reason I probably like DSO, because even when you have the best gear, which in that game is it's not a set in stone thing. You get different gear sets for different occasions, for different
bonuses, right?
Yeah, and you change gear all the time. So yeah, I like dynamic endgame. I don't like best in slot idea. So yeah, in Final Fantasy 11, it's called merit points. So it's champion levels.
To jump in there though, when ESO, for example, you just said like you need this gear for this thing and this gear for that thing. Yeah. That's technically best in slot. You just have multiple sets of best in slots.
Yes.
And I think it really comes down to, and we've kind of talked a lot about it, but haven't really like addressed it, is Endgame, I really feel, is all about what is your goal. To me, Endgame is, my goal is to get gear to down more bosses. So for you, your endgame might be to live in this world and craft the best thing so that I can go out and kill people with it. It's all about goals.
Mine's just to experience all the content.
Right, live in the world.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Experience everything the game has to offer, but not necessarily have to do it 100 times, 10 times a week, the same.
So what stuff. You would want is a deep game as opposed to one with like breadth. I think I'm getting that right. Where there's a lot to do versus doing a little bit a lot.
Yes.
Like you can log in and accomplish one thing and have it off your like your checkbox list is humongous.
Yes.
Mine would be short, but I would have to repeat the same content to get it.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yep.
Breadth versus depth.
Like I enjoy leveling in WoW more than I enjoy endgame. So
I'd actually
WoW's endgame is it's terrible.
It's difficult. Yeah. It's really hard to talk about WoW in a positive manner. I mean, I think they do a lot of things right, but I think this expansion really
here's what's crazy to me. So we talk about all this and we say these specific things we want.
Yeah.
We all loved classic WoW, vanilla WoW.
Yeah.
But none of us got past like level 30 when classic came out.
Well, part of that was timing. Like I just it's just takes so much time. My goal was to do dungeons and raids with my friends, and they were 10 to 15 and it's at one point 20 levels above me because they could play, like they would go to work, they'd come home, they'd play till they went to bed, and they would do that every day, and I didn't have that schedule. So I got behind them, And at that point, my goal couldn't be achieved for the next month or two, so I quit.
Yeah, and think about that. And that's exactly why I think a lot of MMOs have gone down that path where when you play the game before Endgame, it's a bit easier. It's not as demanding because when you get to Endgame and you start grinding out that gear, you have a better likelihood of being able to play with your friends, in my opinion, than trying to get from level 10 to 30 and trying to get to 30 in a couple nights to catch up, you know?
Unless you have the same schedule. You have to
Well,
if you have the same schedule as someone, and if someone plays more than the other person, you'll get behind, and then it'll feel daunting to catch up, and you get disheartened like I did and quit. I mean, I'm still leveling a character in Classic because I re-up my sub. But my goal now is just to try to play when I can, get the guy to 60 so that when Classic TBC comes out, I can hopefully then get the goal of playing Endgame with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask.
They're so much far ahead of me now, it's not worth trying to catch up. It would just be insane.
Yeah.
I want to ask one question, and there's no agenda behind this. I genuinely want to know.
Yeah.
What's the last MMO that you guys played for more than 2 months?
World of Warcraft.
Okay.
I guess
played for the entirety of Legion. That was 2 years straight without unsubbing and not playing the game.
Legion, what levels? 100 to 110?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was the expansion before BFA. I played from launch to about a month or two into BFA, and then BFA was so bad it made me quit.
And then what kept you in it?
I would have kept going. My
Because
guild.
you were the same level with your friends? Okay, you had a guild. Okay.
Well, and my friends were in it too.
Okay.
I had a group of two. It was actually me and another friend. We were essentially officers of a guild. We eventually became officers of a guild. Actually, to go back even further, I played by myself when Legion first came out, and I joined a guild and I was trying to raid, and then eventually I suckered my friend to come back, and the two of us stuck around for the rest of the expansion when we would have quit because of the guild, doing endgame content.
Okay. And
Well,
Greg?
and me, Swiper, Greg, you can call me whatever the hell you want.
Swiper, Swipper.
Swiper,
All right,
Swipper,
Tom,
Greg.
go ahead.
Okay, so I think I went on a tear of Final Fantasy 14 for a while before Shadowbringers came out. I think that was probably a few months because it took me a few months to get past the MSQ.
That's wrong. It was Shadowbringers for me. That I played for more than 2 months.
Yes, you did play that a lot. You played more than Jake and I did.
But I finished it all. I got to raiding, and then that's where I was like, well, my schedule doesn't fit. So I
got pissed off because I had to redo the content on my dancer that I did on my red page, and I didn't want to do it again.
Yeah, and I've been playing WoW pretty consistently nowadays.
Yeah, you've been playing WoW for it's coming up on.
It's been 2 months, 3 months.
It's coming up on 2 months.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It is. Oh, it's been 2 months. It's
but in between that time, I've been jumping all over the effing place, man. All over. I've gone through like crazy withdrawal symptoms of like I gotta play something, but I don't know what to play. I don't want to play anything. I mean, I played ESO for about a month, and it's insane, man. Like I want to find a home, man. I have a whole stupid video about it, so I don't need to go over it, but. I just want a home, man, and this is the thing. This is why I want to talk about Endgame and like how to keep players in Endgame, because the more you play a single MMORPG, just the better you're gonna get at it. The more you're gonna know about it, and it's like the more you get invested in it. You know what I'm saying? And constantly jumping around, it kind of drives me kooky a little bit. It does.
Yeah.
I think you touched on it. Like, how do you keep people around? And I said it why I played Legion for so long.
Yeah,
it's community.
You
need to find that group, and you will find your home, Swiper, when you find that group of people that you want to continue to do the content with.
Yeah,
that
and
it's solid.
It's going to be outside of your real friends, unfortunately.
No,
you can bring them with you, but it needs to be beyond that.
Exactly, Nico. You can include them, but you have to discover that other people first. That's
friends.
exactly
What are we playing? An MMORPG? What are you guys talking about? I have to make friends.
Fine. I did have an agenda by bringing this up. Community was the agenda. Because mine was Final Fantasy 11. And I immediately got into a huge guild that was very helpful, and I played that game for fucking 6 months, every day.
Yeah.
And it was because of the people.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. It's very weird, and the biggest thing about that is, and I don't know if Captain, if you're included in this, but me and Swiper and our other friends like Troy are so against it and so reticent to reach out to people and become
It's
included
weird.
in that.
It's
And
so
ruins
weird.
the game.
It does.
Yep.
It does. It's weird, man.
No,
Like,
I've had my best moments in MMOs from the start of World of Warcraft in 2004 to today. We're in guilds, big guilds,
Yeah.
big raiding guilds,
That's
doing
it.
content with the people. Like my friends were included pretty much most of the time, except for that beginning stint in Legion, where there would be times where there would be like 10 of us all playing, and be like, we need to find a guild where we all can come. And then there would be a time. The best times were actually there was 4 of it was vanilla WoW. There was 4 of us, and we joined a guild. It was called Peon This because we were a horde. Peon, like the orc.
oh, okay, I like it.
And I was a rogue.
Done. Yeah.
Yep, I was a rogue. We had a priest, mage, and a mage, and we did all of vanilla content with this guild. And it's crazy. Like my real life friends, we would play to like. We would raid. This is early college days, so I would never be able to do this now. We would raid till like midnight, 1 o'clock, and then we would go to Denny's, and we would be at Denny's till like 3 or 4 in the morning. We would get our meals. We would talk. We would just go reminisce about what we did with the guild,
Yep.
and then we would like every weekend. Best times.
Yeah.
You have to find people to play with, and you can bring your friends along, but you need to have those guilds. You cannot play
Denny's,
MMOs in small groups.
You would eat way too much, and then you'd walk outside and sneeze 40 times in a row.
Yes.
And that's where you develop that habit.
I got one of my WoW characters' names were as Dango because it was a drink at Denny's.
That's actually a really solid point. I mean, I didn't even think of that, and I remember. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that this whole podcast, the point is community. That's, I think, what it comes down to.
No matter what you're doing, do it with other people.
That's right, and seek them out. Do your best to get into a good community in the game that's already established.
And I think that's why people stick with like WoW when it's at its worst, because they've got a guild that they don't want to leave.
Exactly it. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Super sorry.
No, it's cool, man. I was just kind of gonna reminisce, and like I remember doing like that one raid in 14, and I found this random group of people, and they were the nicest, most patient people on this entire planet. And I was trying to heal this fucking thing, and we got so close to finishing it, and all I wanted to do that next day was do it again with these same people. You know, they were so helpful and so nice, and you know, I don't even know why I quit. I don't remember. I think it's because I was playing by myself. I don't remember why. It was a long time ago, but it felt really good. It did. You know, but I'm just so not used to jumping into chat and things like that, and like talking to a bunch of random strangers. I'm getting better at it, but I think that is a really solid point. And I think overall, when I really think about this and this topic, developers can do whatever they think is best or what's fun, and they can't judge everybody off of what's going to be fun, right? But I guess, like Jake, you said this to me or Johnny, you said this to me a while ago. You know, you play an MMO and you find the fun in it. You know, every MMO has some kind of fun in it. You got to find it.
Every big MMO has good aspects to it that you will enjoy no matter who you are.
Yeah.
But you have to find them normally.
Yeah.
And you have to work to do that. So.
Absolutely. Well, no, I mean, I don't. I think we had a really good conversation. I really like it. Do you guys have any last thoughts or final thoughts?
I do. We're playing 14 again.
Yes,
so we
are.
We got a good free company. We still have to start utilizing them, I think, and including them.
I mean, we have to talk to other people.
We have to talk to people that we don't fucking know, that probably live in like Missouri and boring as fuck. But we still got to reach out to them and do things with them. Yeah.
Well, hey, if we're gonna preach it, we're gonna have to do it, right?
I don't know any Missouri.
I think we've got a good topic for the next episode already. We can have an entire episode on community, how to build
it, what
how to do it yourself when you're just going into a game that whatnot. So
no, I think we're good. I think we're good. So let me just go ahead and do the sign off. So I'll put everybody's links, their Twitch links, Twitter links, whatever you guys have. I'll just put it in the description below. We are on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast, iTunes, whatever you freaking call it. I'm sorry. So you can find us there. We have a Patreon as well. So if you want to support us, by all means, go ahead. But other than that, we will have another episode coming up in a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I'll let you know. I'll get a schedule out there. So thank you guys so much for joining. I appreciate it. Hope you all have a good weekend and stay safe, everybody. See ya.
See ya. It was fun.
See you later.